should people having IVF treatment be guaranteed time off work for appointments? Campaign group Fertility Matters at Work want it to be a legal right, and they're calling for IVF to be recategorised as a medical procedure. At the moment, it's called an elective treatment, a bit like if you went in for a boob job or a nose job. They say that this would help tackle the lack of support in many workplaces. According to recent research, over a third of people undergoing fertility treatment have considered leaving their jobs due to physical and emotional pressure. Should those having IVF or fertility treatment get time off work? Do get your calls in 0207 862 2222. And Andrea, you did go through IVF treatment, so you do know how time-consuming it is, how psychologically all-consuming it is. Describe a little bit of what it's like.
First of all, I was really lucky in that, yes, I went through the beginning stages of IVF, which is where you try naturally for a number of years, then you have a series of tests, and then you start the hormone journey where you get pumped full of hormones. And that's the bit that is really quite challenging to live with, because obviously as a woman, you're the one that's going through that in the partnership. The way I described it is I could feel everything rushing around my body. You do feel, physically you feel different. Mentally you feel quite vulnerable, because this is something that you really hope is going to, end in having a child. For me, I was fortunate that because I was having all these hormones pumped in me, I ended up getting pregnant naturally. We were just before the stage of, my husband at the time had done what he needed to do so that everything could be done together in a different room where we weren't there. But I ended up getting pregnant naturally. But at the time, it actually didn't occur to me to even mention it to anyone at work, never mind tell anyone or ask for time off or anything like that. Perhaps if things had been different and I knew that I could, maybe I would have done. But I suppose it was a different time back then.
Different times, absolutely. Let's talk about this too, Dr. Natalie Rout, because I want to know, what does it entail, Doctor? What sort of amount of time might you need to take off work for let's say, just one cycle of IVF?
Oh, hi, Vanessa. Thanks for having me. I think the first thing to say is it does vary from individual to individual. But we are still looking at a lot of appointments. So like you've heard, you'd probably have to be prescribed a lot of medication. And before that, you'll have counselling, you'll have pre-screening bloods, ultrasound scans, maybe even further investigations, for example, to check if the tubes are open. So that's already a chunk of time that's taken out before you've even got to the injection phase. Then you're going through these injections, which you do at home, but can have a number of side effects. And so from a medical point of view, you may need time off in that phase as well. Then we go on to the scans. So you will be scanned to see if everything is going as planned. You may need to be attending scans every other day. Some people maybe every day for a series of a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then you have your eggs taken out, an egg retrieval. And that's sort of a day procedure. And you'd probably want to take that day off work, and you may need the next day off work as well to recover from that. Some people may be slightly longer. As I said, it does vary from individual to individual. But then after that, we've not even got to the point yet where the egg is then transferred, the embryo is then transferred. And that can be done through different options. And so there isn't sort of a set procedure and a set timeline that happens for everyone going through IVF. But you're looking at a huge amount of time there already. And of course, it goes without saying, but sometimes these things don't work. And then you're looking at another cycle as well. But throughout all of that, you're not only going through all the physical side effects, but you're also going through the emotional side effects as well.
Doctor, let me just ask something. If I said, yes, it seems like an awful lot of different appointments and different procedures and lots of stuff going on, is it conceivable, and that's the right word for this situation, is it conceivable that you might be able to book them out of working hours, like before work, after work, or even in the lunch hour, or are they going to eat heavily into the working day each time?
Not every appointment will take a lot of time. So, for example, you need to go for your blood tests. That's maybe, the procedure itself is a few minutes, but you might need to get to the appointment and maybe, half an hour either side. Okay, but then you could go back to work. Something more like the egg retrieval process is going to take, you're probably going to want the whole day off and then the day off afterwards. Again, it will vary from individual to individual because some people have severe side effects to those injections that they use, where they're vomiting, they're in a lot of pain, they may end up in hospital as an emergency admission. So then you could be looking at several days off as well. But in general, a lot of these appointments will be maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half for the pre-counseling and the scans and the blood tests. So you're not exactly looking at a whole day off. Someone could take the middle of the day out for lunch and then go back. But I
Doctor,
wouldn't
thank
expect you to get
really
everything done
appreciate
beforehand.
it, because we needed to know what scale of being absent are we talking about before we even discuss this. So thank you, Doctor, very much indeed for joining us. Claire, what do you think as you listen to this? Do you think it ought to be a statutory right to have time off free?
I do, but I think the key thing here for me was when you, Andrea, said that it didn't even occur to you to tell your employer or indeed your friends. And I think the key there is the fact that anyone going through a cycle of IVF, women having the hormones pumped in to put their body into menopause and then start it back up again, and for their partner then to deal with that must be huge. And I also think you possibly wouldn't have told anyone because of the hope that it would happen, and knowing that you didn't want everyone to know what you were going through. But I do think that employers should be able to give time off, and I think on the whole they will and they do, because it is, as your doctor just said, it's only a couple of hours perhaps during the day or for the pre-counselling. And again, you wouldn't want up in the office calendar, Andrea, IVF clinic, 2 p.m, you know? So it must be regarded, I think, on a one-to-one basis. But I do think, like pregnancy for antenatal classes, as you will have gone through them, that it is a protected right, and therefore companies should support.
There has to be some restrictions, though. It can't be the employer's responsibility entirely to facilitate those appointments necessarily. And I think, I mean, if that doesn't sound medical after what the doctor just described, I don't know what does. So I think during the first round of IVF, which is often NHS, available on the NHS, providing you meet all the relevant criteria, then employers perhaps should be obligated to meet the appointment schedule. But beyond that, if you then go for a second or third or fourth round of IVF, which is elective at that stage, then whilst employers shouldn't necessarily be responsible to provide the time off, you should be able to have a conversation with them, surely. I mean, every employer now has the right to allow their employees to work flexibly. So let's have a bit of give and take, surely.
Right, let's talk to Sharon. She's on the line in Staffordshire. Sharon, what do you think about this?
Good morning,
Hi.
Vanessa, and your lovely guests as well, Vanessa.
So nice
I
to
agree
see
with
you.
the man on the panel, actually, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a lifestyle choice. I don't mind giving, like, for one round if they need to have hospital appointments or whatever. But I think you could go on like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. No, it's not fair onto the employer, and it's not fair to your colleagues either. So it's a lifestyle choice. So you need to make the necessary arrangements if need be. But no, I don't think employers should be giving them time off for
So you've used
2,
that
3, 4,
phrase
5 cycles.
twice, Sharon. You've called IVF treatment a lifestyle choice. And at the moment it is. It's categorised alongside deciding to have a boob job or deciding to have the fat under your chin sucked out. You just choose to have it. It's up to you whether you have it or not. It's not medical. But what do you think of the idea, though, that, a problem with fertility in that you cannot get pregnant and you've really tried and tried and tried, the conventional way, that is medical. It's not a lifestyle choice that you couldn't get pregnant. If you'd chosen, you'd have got pregnant when you wanted to. And this is a kind of medical, physical impediment to your life in the same way as if your hip gives way and you can't walk. You haven't chosen. It's not an elective lifestyle choice. So why do you call it that, I'm wondering?
Well, probably it's not the right phrase to use, Vanessa, but I just don't think employers should be having to fund this for anybody. It's up to you if you want to go through that. You need to make the necessary arrangements then, but not to put the burden onto your co-workers at all and your employer. I think it's up to you, basically. No, I don't agree with it. I'm sorry, I don't.
Sharon, thank you. You don't have to apologise. You're absolutely entitled to your own opinion, and it's good to hear from you, and I'm glad you called. Thank you. But Claire, I just wonder, we hear of this charity pushing and saying there is a sort of stigmatising of IVF, and sort of when Sharon used that phrase twice, a lifestyle choice, I think maybe that's what we heard there, possibly.
Perhaps, but I think the charity was making people aware, of what is happening, because infertility is rising, for whatever reason it is. So that in order to keep the population up, we have to encourage people to have children. obviously. So we would rather people have children in a committed relationship and who really want children. Although there are cases for adoption and for fostering and everything else, why should that be left to the childless couples to take that on, okay? So in terms of pushing the narrative, no pun intended, I think it's hugely important. And I think, to be honest with you, as women, we do carry the brunt of responsibility. And I think that we would not want to take more than a day off, half a day off, and we certainly wouldn't shirk our responsibilities in the workplace.
Val. Now, Val's on the line in the West Midlands, and she really knows what she's talking about because she's been through IVF. Thank you so much for ringing, Val. Thank you. Tell me, what was it like when you went through it, and did you tell your employers what was going on?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
I didn't tell my employer because I felt embarrassed. So I would take annual leave or flex time off. But there were times after the injections or after my checkup that I felt I needed time just to unwind, relax, just have time to myself rather than rushing to work. And yes, the injections, I was doing them around my tummy area, so it could be used as a shower sparkle, I think, by the end of it. But I remember one time when I had to have the injection in my leg, and I know they told me that if you don't move around, it will freeze. You will not be able to walk. And through the nature of my work, I was due in court on that day, and I thought, oh, don't be silly. Of course it's going to move. And of course, when I got into court, I must have been there for about an hour before my case came on. And lo and behold, when I tried to get up, my leg was so stiff, I could not move it at all. And that was the embarrassment that took the whole thing off. And I rang somebody at work and I said, can you bring the car down for me? And can somebody come upstairs just to bring me down? And one of the males, he came up and he just looked at me and he said, what's the matter with you? And I said, just help me. And that's it. And I just held his arm and managed to come down into the car. But it was then that I realised that I should have asked for some more support, and I'm sure they would have accommodated. But it is at that stage that you need so much support and help from other people.
I hardly like to ask this, but I can't really help. It's my job. I've kind of got to ask you this. But was the IVF treatment successful in the end?
It worked the fourth time, I think. I think the third time was excruciating because it succeeded. And after the positive results, after 4 weeks, there was bleeding, and I went into hospital, and I said to them, it's an IVF, please treat me sensitively. And the woman just said to me, oh, yeah, of course we will. And she made me walk all the way to the where I was going to have an X-ray done or something done. And she said, it's only down there. And I said, you know, I'm miscarrying. Could I have a wheelchair? And she said, oh, it's only down there. Don't worry, you'll be fine. Hold my arm. And by the time she took me there, I came back. I had totally miscarried. And, you know, Vanessa, that was the time when I'm not a crying person. The tears were just flooding. You know, that was my opportunity to have a baby. And I felt as though someone has taken it away from me. And I didn't know if I was going to conceive again. And I think for about 4 weeks, I just cried and cried. You know, I don't know where the tears were coming from or why I was crying.
But in the end, did you say that the fourth one was successful? Are you a mum now?
I am. I've just got the one child.
Good. Oh, phew. Good. I mean, it's always so kind of awkward to ask, but you just wonder after all of that. And thank you so much for calling, Val. And I'm so glad that it did work out well for you in the end. But I mean, Andrea, you will be the one here who knows about the emotional toll, because, you know, we've talked about time off work, you know, to attend this appointment and that appointment, this blood test, this procedure, this injection, and it's a whole load of stuff, isn't it? But the emotional toll, where you say you didn't really want to even talk about it because you were just hoping so fervently that it would work. But you didn't want to necessarily let all your employers and everything in on that emotion.
Well, do you know, it wasn't even just employers, it was family as well.
Really?
It was just my husband and I who knew that I was going through it. And one family member, now ex-family member, was particularly horrible about it and made the comment that, you know, oh, the reason that you can't have children is because you're too career-driven, and didn't know I was actually going through IVF. And when I sort of gently explained, actually, that's not the case, we've tried for quite a while and, you know, now we're going through this, was actually really unsympathetic and very hard about it, as it was my fault that I couldn't have them naturally. And that made me shut up even more, because I thought, this is difficult enough on its own. I can't bear the weight of other people's opinion on this. So actually, I just kept it very quiet. And then when it was successful, all good.
What's clear, I think, from Val's call and from what Andrea was saying is we need more sensitivity around this, don't we? From employers, from friends, from family. For goodness sake, if this is not the most important thing human beings are here for, surely we need to just be a little bit more sensitive around this conversation.
I'm
and
amazed to hear that it's stigmatised after all these years. And
Stunning.
Didn't we see something in the papers only last week saying 1 in 6 pupils in every classroom is the result of IVF?
IVF.
So it's now so common, it's so normal. People we meet wouldn't be here without it. You think we'd be rejoicing, Louise Brown, hooray, and all of that. And instead of that, there's this stigmatising, which seems absolutely extraordinary, doesn't it, really?